Does LinkedIn, as a private platform, have a right to ban people on the platform? Today we're joined by Howard Chalfin, who is an entrepreneur based in Manhattan, and he's also working on a TV series. He's a really deep thinker, he's a man's man, he's got a very humorous way of speaking, and so we discussed this issue with LinkedIn private platforms and what they can do in terms of censoring. I personally know people that have been banned permanently, and we'll have them on later on in the show. But today we're going to hear from Howard and his opinions. Let's go. Hey Howie, good to see you again. How are you doing?
I'm good, Nikos. How are you doing, man?
Yeah, pretty good. It's been around 37 degrees here in Vienna, so I've got a fan blowing in the background. So I'm just got a little bit of drafts coming in here.
37 degrees in Austria.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah, we've had
global warming, maybe. I don't know.
I mean, there's something going on. I don't know. I mean, all the guys calling for the climate, the global cooling people. I mean, I'm not saying it won't happen in 2040. I mean, I have no idea, but certainly not now. I mean, maybe sometime later, but we'll see.
Have you heard any of my Kevin Kuchman videos?
I caught a little bit of it. I haven't really, I've been so busy with this like new intern that we took on, and plus the television show. I've really got some good feedback, and we're going to try and move that forward too. I should get my plug in for my Lizzie show. I think the new working title is Lizzie, Are You Going to Be My Girl? And that will allow the theme song to be that old song from Jet, which is Are You Going to Be My Girl? Which is a cool song from about 20 years ago, kind of Euro poppy rock. But no, I haven't checked in a while. Tell me what the gist of. Tell me what the thesis is.
Well, basically, that the global warming theory is a scam, and that the carbon dioxide molecules are not absorbing heat in the way that the theory predicts, because basically the carbon dioxide is behaving the same as the other gases, and the proponents that are saying that carbon dioxide is absorbing all this heat energy, light energy, it only applies at a certain temperature and 77.2 atmosphere or something like that in Jupiter. But I mean, I can't explain it as well as Kevin, but you're welcome to.
Let me say global warming. So my theory on global warming is that it doesn't really affect my feelings about carbon and fossil fuels. I came from the fossil fuel business, so I'm very familiar with it. And it's just dirty as hell. And, whether carbon creates global warming or not, I tend to think it's doing something. Although, of course, if we're in some global cooling cycle, maybe that's beneficial. I mean, certainly now it doesn't look that way, but maybe in 10 years it will. I don't know. Whoa. Look at mosquitoes. Anyway, so, but anyway, let's go to LinkedIn, because like I said, I've got that hard stop, and I think people are interested in this topic. We can do another show on climate change and a debate on that some other time. But LinkedIn, I guess, I got kicked off for a month. And it really wasn't a month. I mean, it was a month, but it was a month because I made it a month. And let me tell you what I mean by that. So it was, I guess, about 6 weeks ago now. And I had made a couple posts that morning, and it was the morning that all over the news was the destruction of the apartment buildings in Gaza. One of the Israelis had blown up some buildings to sort of say, hey, cool it. And I guess a bunch of kids died. And, it was kind of I consider it an atrocity, but, whatever. So I was supporting a post by a member of the Rothschild family, which was very against the atrocity, because, I myself am a refugee of the Holocaust, and, my great-grandparents were killed in concentration camps, things like that. And, the idea that it's only wrong when Germans do it to Jews, but if Jews do it to Palestinians, then, hey, that's the luck of the draw, and they kind of deserve it, and they should have attacked in 48 and 52 and 67. And, as we get to 67 and we get the sinking of the U.S. Liberty, so it gets kind of interesting. But irregardless of that, and that's not what we're here to talk about today, LinkedIn did not ban me for any of that kind of stuff. All the conspiracy stuff that I say, LinkedIn is cool with, and I'm cool with LinkedIn. And I want to say that right out of the gate that, I think what they did ban me for, and again, it didn't have to be 30 days. Why was it 30 days? It was 30 days because I was lazy. Because they don't give you, and then they do things a little stupidly also. To be fair, let me give this criticism to them if they watch this video. You got to communicate that. I mean, maybe because I'm not a member, and maybe I should be a member. I got to be honest. I think about it. It's not that much money. I'm not exactly sure. I guess what allows me is a little more insight into who's looking at my profile, and I can send mail to people who aren't friends of mine, which has, I'm not sure that's all good. It's all right.
Well, basically, the premium badge means I'm rich because I can afford $60 to send 5 emails.
I don't like the way the badge looks. That's the other issue. I don't like the badge. I don't like the badge. I hear what you're saying. I understand what you're saying. I personally don't find it prestigious. I think it looks, but having the idea that I use LinkedIn as a platform and that I should give some money towards it as a subscriber is one that I think makes sense. The idea that I think there's a real business advantage to me being a member is one I'm less.
Did you think that Rothschild profile was a real one?
Well, they are. The Rothschild family, there's those two guys, one brother. They were like not brothers, I think they were cousins. One of them I think was kicked off. One of them was pretty Trumpian right wing. And he, I think, was banned and basically said, screw it. And let me finish my ban story because I did want to put this on tape. So the reason why it waited 30 days is, so LinkedIn doesn't communicate with you. They don't send you a letter saying, hey, Howard Chalfin, we're not happy with you. You threatened to punch someone in the face today, which is actually kind of what got me banned. And it really wasn't a threat to punch him in the face. Now, I'll go into that in a minute, because what ultimately they said got me banned was bullying, which is absurd. Because the idea that I was going to fight this guy, I wanted him to back down because I told him I would punch him, whatever. It's ridiculous. I mean, was I a little immature? Perhaps. Does LinkedIn have the right to keep a code of conduct that is professional? Absolutely. The fact that they allow some cursing and stuff, I think that's great. I think in modern business, you can curse. Can you threaten to punch people in the face? Not really.
That's the first time I've actually heard of somebody threaten to punch someone in the face.
Well, let me tell you this. We're like a villain or like a 2-year-old. Let me tell you the story. But before I go to the story, let me just say about the ban. So they don't communicate with you. They don't send you a letter. I kind of understood why. Like, I got it. The guy complained to them. They looked at it. They had said, whoa. Now, the ban works like this. They don't send you a letter. You got to figure this shit out. But what they do is they say, hey, your account is restricted temporarily. So, all right, what's temporary? So this has happened to me before over something probably not that dissimilar. And it lasted 2 days. And to be honest, LinkedIn isn't that like vital to my business. In some ways, the 30 days I was off probably were more productive to my business, but that's okay. But that's not why I do it. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. But they make you go to your PC and log in. And then they tell you that they want to see your ID, because I guess that they're having problems with you. They want to make sure you're not a bot or like an agent, or they want to see you're real. And then once I showed them I was real, then they said, oh, you violated our code of conduct by bullying, and you need to promise not to do it again. And I said, send us a letter saying you won't do it again. So I said, all right, dear LinkedIn, I'm sorry I broke your code of conduct and I won't do it. And then I was reinstated. Could I have done that in 48 hours? Probably. Yeah. I mean, what made me wait a month? Because, when it didn't take 2 days, I figured it'd be a week. And then when it was a week, I figured it'd be 2 weeks. And then, I got used to not being on it, and I really stopped caring a lot. And I figured I'll wait a month. Must be a month. It must go to a month. And then after a month, when it didn't reinstate me, and I have a lot of friends that go something like that I really appreciate. I'm really grateful for. Because I think that LinkedIn gives us a chance to participate in the global community of people and ideas and meet people that have ideas that are, somewhat simpatico to our own. And we try and educate each other and give each other mutual support and, build alliances of sorts, But what got me banned, to cut to the chase, is so Rothschild, and I believe this again. Is it possible it's not a Rothschild? I don't think so. Like I said, these two guys would communicate with each other. They would show pictures on vacation with their uncle, the Baron. You know, if it was some sort of LARP, and then the real Rothschilds aren't quiet. Like if someone was LARPing them, I bet they would say to LinkedIn, "Hey, get this guy off." You know, with the Rockefeller family, I thought that was true, but the Rockefeller family has a lot of interesting branches. And I learned that.
So LARP means live action role play.
Right. Someone just goes, someone who's gaslighting, right? Someone who's just speeding you a story. Why? Maybe they're trying to steal from you. Maybe they're just mentally ill. Maybe they're just bored. And this is something that, I think that's sort of mental illness too. If you're that bored that you have to play games all day on the internet, you really should find something more to do with yourself. I mean, there's other things you can do. You can help people. I mean, the world is, there's so many people that need help in so many ways. If you're that bored that you're playing games with people, turn it around and do something positive. But all right, let's give you that.
I connected to Rothschild, and he posted some kind of interesting post, and I basically messaged him like, do you want to do like a 15-20 minute podcast on it? But never replied, and I think his account's like gone anyway. So I'm like, yeah,
he's the guy, right? That's the other one. He's very right wing. The other one is left wing. The left wing one's still there. I'm not going to mention his name because we're not here to. That's not. I don't know. I don't personally. We don't communicate. Like some of the guys on LinkedIn I'm friends with, we are on each other. I certainly don't know I am with him. I'm not there. That's not that I would. It's just we just don't.
And LinkedIn's a small community because we're talking about some Rothschild, and we're both talking about the same person, even though we're not sure that we're mutual friends.
On the algorithm. It's not a small community. It's a very large community. The algorithms create neighborhoods. So you're in we're in the same neighborhood.
Right, got you.
How do we get in that neighborhood? I mean, there's many ways. One of you and I are in the same neighborhood now because we reified it, from doing the podcast together some months ago. But, it's really what you click. They see what you click and clicks like. And, it doesn't mean we agree on everything because we don't. And I think we'll get into that disagreement. If I can tell my LinkedIn ban story. So Rothschild comes in and says, this is terrible, killing Palestinian children. Israel needs to act responsibly. I say, right on, man. And then immediately I drew fire from some of these sort of keyboard warriors. And whether they're paid by the Israelis or they're just naturally very pro-Zionist or whatever their reasoning is, I don't know. This person in particular was not Jewish or Israeli. He was Armenian, which again, I have many Armenian friends over the years. I'm not trying to pick on Armenians. It's a weird fact that a Jewish guy, threatened on LinkedIn to punch someone in the face who was defending Israel. And he was defending the Palestinians. But it wasn't really that simple. That's not why I took a punch in the face. What it was is that these keyboard warriors are very snarky. And what they are is they're very passive aggressive. And all my life, I hate passive aggressiveness. If you ever read my LinkedIn stuff, you know that I'm like alpha male. It's cool that alpha male conquered himself, but he didn't conquer himself. Be dominated by beta male. That's crazy. And it won't well, that's what's going on. That's the story of the modern world because they have their voodoo technology. It's bullshit. And that no one knows better than the army that it's bullshit because the army has the technology. The army can kick out all these losers and say, here's the fucking technology. Get the fuck out of here, clowns. But then the whole game is blown up. The whole Wall Street charade, the whole Silicon Valley charade. And these are all bullshit stuff. And that's another podcast. But he basically, and it's been a while, I'm trying to exactly refresh my memory exactly what he said, but the gist of it was he insulted that I had Elizabeth's picture with me on my LinkedIn profile, which I have for two reasons. One is I really don't have that many pictures by myself. That's part of it. Although I did find the one with me holding the Stanley Cup that I have in my website. That's too obnoxious for LinkedIn. I think that's more obnoxious. The other reason is Liz is a very jealous woman, and she wants everyone to know. She doesn't want me using LinkedIn as a means to flirt. Not that I ever would. I think that's inappropriate. But do people flirt on LinkedIn? I mean, sure. Have I ever?
I absolutely love the comment you got on your profile picture. It's hilarious, man.
Yeah. So he was like, maybe it's inappropriate that you have your trophy wife in the picture. He actually complimented Liz.
Yeah.
and I should have said like, thank you and shut up. I look back on it, that's what I should have said.
Yeah, man.
But instead I was like, trophy wife. I'm like, where do you get the nerve? Where do you come off with this kind of attitude? If you were standing in front of me and said that to me, I'd punch you in the face. And then he came back snarky as ever, knowing that, of course, this is all meaningless bullshit. He comes back to me and he says, you look like an old man that's a keyboard warrior. And I don't know, I don't know what you should be saying, he wasn't really threatening me, but he was sort of letting me know that he was sort of a younger guy and maybe I should be a little intimidated by him or whatever. I mean, it's absurd because we're never going to meet each other. I mean, the whole thing is ridiculous. And I've said on LinkedIn, I have a very sort of uncanny, weird thing about me that, on Wall Street, it started, after college, and my lifestyle was I was out 5 nights a week. I was on expense account 5 nights a week. I was drinking heavy 5 nights a week. Was I doing other things sometimes? Sure. And, when I met someone who was like sort of a jerk, and I thought that they weren't that tough, like whether they were bigger than me or not wasn't that important. If they looked really big and strong, that would matter. But if they were just a little bigger than me, you're my size. So I got very good at sizing people up. And, I'm like 1,000-0. And like someone has a big mouth. And I'm not saying I punch everyone in the face. I mean, it's happened. But generally, you start just by pushing them around, and then you see the fear in their eyes. Then all of a sudden that happy, I'm a wise ass mofo becomes like, oh, I want to stand now. And that's like heroin to me. I mean, that was heroin. That moment was like 1,000 orgasms. Really, it's a great moment for if you're wired a certain way. I'm not saying it's right. I really didn't hurt anyone. Like I gave a guy a black eye and he sued me. And the judge said, I don't like violence. And I'm going to give him $90,000. And there's nothing wrong with it. The doctor said he had floaters, which is like an old age disease where your retina detaches. It's like crazy.
You had to pay $90,000?
Well, I never paid him. I went bankrupt. And I thought I'd get out of it, not for that, but for my ex-wife and for a million different monies that I owed, which and bankruptcy doesn't get you out of stuff like this. And if you Google me, that's what you see. It'll say, ooh, he was bankrupt and he was sued. 6'4". Weighs 270 pounds, is the bouncer at my friend's jazz club. And all I wanted to do was leave, and he had me backed into a corner. And when I basically said, hey, face, oops, you can censor, you can cut that out later. He said, no, I'm much bigger than you, and I'm going to push you around. And, a big man can push you around. I mean, a guy that's 5'11", 185 pounds can be pushed around by a man that's 6'5", 250 easily. But can that smaller man punch him in the face and knock him down? Absolutely, he can. And if he doesn't, he's an idiot. And if there's a judge who's a moron, that's the American way. And if he thinks he'll ever get people out of me, and if he thinks there'll ever be any guy, I owe my ex-wife more money than he'll ever see. So, he's not going to get any money. But it makes me look bad if you Google me. So I guess it's like a chink in my armor. But let me say one thing about LinkedIn though, because I don't want to let you talk, because I know But I think LinkedIn is fantastic, and I really want to say that. I think that. And if it's fantastic in a world that sucks. Let me say that right off the bat. I'm not saying it's fantastic in a world where everything is so great and LinkedIn stands head and shoulders above other good stuff. But if you look at Facebook, if you look at Twitter, if you look at whatever the hell Google Plus is, if you look at Reddit, which comes in second, I think Reddit's very good. I could explore Reddit more, and we could talk about Reddit actually if you're familiar with it, Nico. So I don't know. You should be if you're not.
I use it sometimes for inbound links to Discord, SEO.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool, but LinkedIn is better. I mean, I couldn't spend. I mean, I spend on LinkedIn. I mean, whenever I have free time, it's like, because I don't do Facebook and I don't do Twitter. Liz does, so I'm very familiar with Facebook and Twitter. Like, if you're going to say, like, well, if you don't use them, how do you know about them? I mean, my partner does, and I see what happens all the time. Twitter, I think, is it's like a mob scene.
Facebook for me is like the worst of both worlds. If I want to meet my friends and stuff, I'll go and meet them face to face. I'm not going to socialize on Facebook for business. If I want to do business, I'll go on LinkedIn and generate business on there.
Right.
Or express my political views.
Right. No, right. And that's the neighborhood that we're in. We're in that neighborhood of people who express their political views and have political views. There can be a little bit anti-establishment, certainly. LinkedIn allows it. I think the idea that they and again, they weren't banning me for a month. When I say banned for a month, it sounds very dramatic. And I was gone. The people that know me and know my friends probably felt bad. Like, where's Howie? Because I post a couple times a day. I find a way of like keeping a diary. I find it a way of communicating with the world and like bearing witness. I mean, I think that, I know you're a very serious Christian, Nikos, and, the Christian ethic, which, I mean, I may not be Christian, but I can certainly belong to this ethic. You don't have to be a Christian to have this ethic, but it is the Christian ethic, is that if you can't aid and assist, you bear witness. And, there's a lot going on in the world. And I'm not saying everything's terrible. I'm not going to say every single thing's terrible, because it's not. But there are a lot of terrible things happening. And some of them we can change and we can try and change. But even if we can't change them, we can at least bear witness and say, hey, we know what's going on. You're not fooling us. Sure. You're not playing games. You're not, not everyone's asleep.
Yeah. So LinkedIn, I'm quite surprised with your positive attitude. I mean, I know a lot of people that got booted off LinkedIn or banned, and it goes down really bad. It went down bad for me. But you're basically what you're saying, and from our conversations.
But you're back. But they reinstated you fine, and you're back
after 5 days. Yeah.
It's a private enterprise. See, that's the thing. A lot of people they think I'm a communist because I love Karl Marx, and I agree with a lot of scientific socialism. I am a scientific socialist, and I think you have to be. I think anyone that doesn't want to use scientific tools and doesn't want to run society for the benefit of itself and not for some vulture capitalist elite, which we have now, which is outrageous, then you have to be a scientific socialist. But does that mean we should abolish private property? No. Is LinkedIn private property? Yes. Microsoft paid a lot of money for it. And, that's the part of capital. Now, how did Microsoft make its money? Let's really go back and do that. I mean, that's not what I'm doing here today. And frankly, that doesn't interest me. I mean, I think I know I was around. I'm old enough. And my father was in the business. So that I know how Microsoft started. I know how Apple started. My father's best friend was like Apple employee number 15. And my dad was at IBM. And his friend left to become the head of marketing at Apple in 1979 or 8 or something. I mean, So I was there for the birth of technology. And that's why I could firmly say that it's way overrated what we're calling technology, and the whole world is sort of backward because of it. It's really become a sort of way of hurting people more effectively and managing people more effectively. And I think that's the real danger that we help to expose by talking about things like the vaccine. I mean, COVID is real. Certainly, it seems to be man-made. Did the Chinese do this intentionally? Perhaps not. Did they try and take advantage of it? Absolutely. Did they start a fear-mongering campaign in the beginning? Absolutely. They sure did. I mean, are some variants in season extraordinarily deadly? Absolutely. Are most variants deadly most of the time to most people? No. No way. No, especially not if you're healthy and your immune system's good. So the idea that everyone should rush in and take these experimental vaccines when it's not even flu season. And COVID is the new flu. People say, oh, flu, COVID, there's no more flu. Flu's gone, because that's not what flus are. People don't understand what a flu is. People are like, oh, the flu is like a fox, and, COVID is like a jackal. You know what I mean? It's like a more effective predator. No, it's a virus. They're the same. The most powerful virus wins. It's like a big arm wrestling contest. And the guy that wins the arm wrestling contest always wins. And everyone turns into him. Then all the virus turns, like flips. Like when you go to the train station and the train changes and they go, psh, that's what happens. And then a wave happens. and the wave comes, and it's a big wave, and people get very sick. And then, yeah, I mean, you have to stay in your house. I mean, the masks, I mean, you know, I mean, are they, I don't know. I mean, certainly I don't think, do they stop people from getting COVID in flu season when sick people come into contact with not sick people? No way. If that's the goal, the mask, it fails. If there's other uses for it, which is true to a certain extent, I can accept that.
Yeah.
But,
so
you know,
in regards to viruses being the same, what's different with this COVID virus is the spike protein, and it's the spike protein that's pretty much the toxin people are thinking. So one of the reasons why I don't like the vaccine is that you basically have, from what I'm reading some papers, they're saying that the spike protein by itself, it's not part of the virus infrastructure. So you've got these spike proteins that are floating around, not attached to the virus if they're from the vaccine. And these can be then stuck on cell walls and small blood vessels and cause like heart problems and things like that, which if it's true, it's going to show dreadful things in a few years' time. So that's
well, you've had COVID, so, you know, I mean, how do you feel?
Well, see, the thing is with COVID, you've got the spike protein attached to the rest of the virus shell. So you've got like a bigger thing floating around, and maybe the body's natural immune system can deal with it better than if you use the vaccine and you're getting pure spike proteins by themselves. And then these are going, right, who knows where in your body.
Okay. So you just put your finger on why I'm waiting for Novavax. It's coming soon. I've had Novavax technology before. I mean, I'm not saying I would have got hepatitis B. I probably wouldn't have. But my doctor said, you want the shot. At that time in my life, I was traveling a lot in the third world. I ate a lot of shellfish. Why not? Sure. You know, I'll get the shot. Why not? You know, and or maybe it's hepatitis A or whatever that. I forget what shot it was. But whatever it was the Novavax technology. And it was fine. You know, I mean, I probably would never quit it anyway, but it didn't hurt me. I know it didn't harm me because I know I haven't been harmed. And my immune system is great. So the idea that I'm going to mainline those spike proteins in twice.
Oh, dear, man.
Where I'm going to put my body, have to deal with something that it wouldn't have to deal with. You know, and there are adverse reactions. You know, like I said, you know, the idea that I'm not saying I would have one, but then my problem becomes already they're saying you don't need a booster.
Well, I mean, a lot of people having symptoms of being really tired when they take this vaccine, and being tired is a symptom perhaps of lack of oxygen. And if these spike proteins are going into your small capillaries in your lungs and killing lung cells and tissues, then that's permanent. Then of course you're going to be tired. Maybe you'll recover from that. And I just don't get it. I just don't get why the world.
The body's capacity to recover. First of all, the news media and the medical establishment, right? So the news media never saw a rich and powerful group. And I'm going to curse. I'm sorry. It starts with the media. That's what they do. So if you're rich and powerful, whatever I worship you, whatever you want, right? And the medical establishment and the drug establishment is as high and holy as it's up there. I mean, Wall Street is special, but these guys they're bigger business. I think they're the biggest business in the world. And it's a really scummy, gross, shitty, anti-humanistic business that only cares about profits and not the health of humanity. And that they sit there and they pretend that they're really high-minded, like Dr. Fauci. And what they really are is just egomaniacs who are control freaks. And I've met so many of these people. And this is one's your society. I feel like, why does society stink? What's going on? Technology's better.
I saw
People
this
are angry and unhappy. The world is facing a starvation crisis. Why? It's 2021. What happened? What happened is the inmates run the asylum. That the organs of justice that were supposed to keep track of the hen house basically said, hey, we're whores. We want money. We want it all. And you can have the run of the house, mother, you know, bro, or whatever.
I saw this research today. I was absolutely shocked. They showed me this picture of all the controlling monopoly companies that controlling all the food brands. And then it showed me who owns them. And just about every company in America has the largest shareholders as BlackRock.
Well, but that's pension money. Yeah, but that's pension. Okay, so I started on Wall Street, so I understand Wall Street. That's America's money. And it's not all pensions. There are rich people in there too. I'm not going to say it's all mom and pop, but there's a tremendous amount. That's what people don't understand. The stock market is basically the mechanism that many, many, many Americans, specifically older Americans, but also many of the young generation, look at it as their piggy bank, as their American dream, as their wealth multiplier. And it's an entitlement. America's the most entitled. I mean, we look at Europe. You guys are so much tougher than we are. You're supposed to be entitled socialists, but you guys are so much less pampered than Americans are. Americans just, they think they're entitled to like the stock market going up every year. You know, they're entitled to these unions that have contracts that go up every year. And then, you know, everyone's going to keep getting richer and richer. And who loses? Whose expense is it? And here's the thing that's the problem. When the US goes crazy printing money, a lot of people are not that smart. And they don't get it. They don't understand how fiat currency works. And they say, oh, if America prints too much money, eventually their money will go down. That's true. But unfortunately, before that happens, all the weak paper money in the world goes to zero or virtually zero. What's weak paper money? Everything else except the euro, the yen, the yuan, you know, like the Canadian dollar and the Swiss franc. You know, I mean, there's a couple of currencies, but India, boom. South Africa, you're watching it go boom now. Let's really go boom. Let's see millions of people die. Because that's where you're going. And that's the system that these idiots have given the world. So that when we're pampering America, we're not doing it at the expense of our children. Probably we are, because we have a lot of problems we're giving our children, mainly the environment and all the plastic, this COVID with all the masks and all the plastic garbage. I mean, that could be on the front page of every newspaper every day. And it wouldn't be hysterical. Like the global warming blocks out the sun. It's the only problem we have. Except global warming, we're doing a great job. I mean, you know, I'm a religious person. You're a religious person. God gave us responsibility over the earth. It's in the Bible. What kind of job do you think we're doing right now? Let me tell you, it's not good. And if it keeps going on like this, I mean, civilizations end. I mean, I'm not an alarmist, and I'm not predicting that. I think we will correct. I really do. I'm an optimist. And I do think that will avert disaster, that we've created a system that averts disasters at the last minute. But the problem we have now is that we're creating disaster for the third world. And we're watching it play out every day. And it has to stop. And even though we never count, and that's what the elites didn't think about. Because when you overprint dollars, you're crowding out bad money. Good money drives out bad, because the world can only take so much fiat. Believe me, they use dollars in all these countries. Every country in the world uses dollars to some extent, including Europeans. There's dollars in Europe, absolutely. Maybe not not in your house, but criminals have dollars. Sure, they do. They pass back and forth dollars. You know, when you trade oil, all oil is traded in dollars, except with Russia now. But I mean, you know, that's not. Most oil comes out of the Middle East still for Europe. So, but LinkedIn, you know, they give us a forum to discuss these things. And I made so many friends in the intelligence community that I never would have made, that I'm very proud of, who I think are very like-minded individuals. You know, I did a column a couple of weeks back about my experience with CIA over my life and how it's been pretty positive, you know. I mean, I'm not sure all the CIA people who knew me was positive, but I mean, you know, I had an ex-girlfriend and I had an ex-partner. The girlfriend, I think, is okay. I mean, she's probably a little disappointed that she wanted to actually move in and get engaged, which was touching. But this was 10 years ago, and I just got out of my first marriage, and I hadn't met my second disastrous girlfriend yet. So until I met Liz. Liz is 3. Liz is not the disaster. Don't worry. And then, of course, I had a partner. I worked with a Chinese oil grandee, for lack of a better term, because he was a retired professor, but he was like a Mandarin. And China is a Mandarin society. Unlike in America, where we don't really care about professors. In China, it's a very distinguished. So he was very distinguished. Plus, his family was very well connected. He was from a very high political family, and his wife's family was connected to the founder of the Chinese National Petroleum Company, CNPC, which was a monopoly that was broken up by my friends, my old partner. And he certainly was affiliated. Again, I'm not letting out some secret agent. As far as I know, he was not in the CIA. But he certainly indicated that this project came out of that effort, that it came out of the cooperation between Chinese government and the U.S. government in terms of developing China's oil capacities, both in China, and ultimately it allowed them to invest all over the world. And it was extraordinarily successful. And to say, oh, we shouldn't have helped China, well, if we didn't help China, the price of oil today would be $250 a barrel. So the fact that we've been able to avert an oil crisis, I am 54 years old. And since I was 10, they were predicting an oil crisis was going to come. And oil is cheaper today now on an inflation basis than it was back then. Because it was $1 a gallon when you could buy a nice meal for $5. And now it's $3 a gallon. And a nice meal is $25. And that's just reality, man. I mean, in 1975, you go into a restaurant, and you can put down $5, and you get like a hamburger, French fries, a shake, a salad. Think about that. Think about what that would cost you pay if you went to a place. I don't mean like a McDonald's. I mean like a not a fancy
restaurant. If
you're
going to London out in the night, then going to a pub, chips are a $5, and that's like $7.
And it is what it is. And oil is not. And anyone who says like oil went crazy, oh my God, it's and like Europe, you use a lot of taxes on your petrol, so it raises the price. In America, we tax it too, but the actual price of oil just isn't very high.
Yeah. Okay, so you've only got 20 minutes left. I want to talk more about LinkedIn. You're saying that LinkedIn has the right to be private. Now, a lot of my friends have been banned. Well, not a lot. I mean, I want like 5 or 6. What and myself,
that's a lot compared to the people that you're in the LinkedIn community. That's a lot.
Yeah. So basically, the way I think it is that okay, LinkedIn is private, but it has social responsibility because it's so big now that it can influence, people's opinions and thoughts, and that's why I go on LinkedIn and try to influence things that I believe in. And I think LinkedIn is just too big now that it can't just say no. We can't. I mean, there's lawsuits about censorship now, so these platforms have to be more careful because they've grown bigger than just a private enterprise. They're actually affecting society.
Right. That's okay. So now you're talking about two different issues to me, and let me just sort of separate them. And they're good issues. It's a great point. One is, what should the government do about these platforms? European government, American government, whatever, Canadian government, Chinese government. And that's a great question. And in terms of looking at these platforms, you have to look at them as businesses and also as these media, controlling the airwaves to some extent. But then there's the other issue of, as a person, what are my expectations of a platform? And, I expect them to run it like a kind of a semi-private club, because they're entitled to do that. If I'm disorderly in your restaurant, you don't have to call policemen. You can kick me out. Now, obviously, if I don't go out, then you call policemen to kick me out, or you have a bouncer or whatever. But it's the same thing. I mean, now you're going to say that you really weren't being unruly. First of all, like the whole vax thing, which has sort of died down now because the people that have gone vaxxed, and the people that haven't gone vaxxed are sort of like, in limbo. But
that's a good point, man. Yeah.
In the early days, they wanted everyone to get vaxxed. And if you made comments that were anti-vax, they were shutting you down. But I don't think that's like from Microsoft. I don't think like Microsoft board of directors. I think that's coming from like the U.S. government. I mean, there's things that like, you're like in an emergency situation. I think even Trump, I don't know if they ever declared a national emergency about COVID or what they did, but I'm sure that there are powers of government in effect that are, extraordinary. And those powers aren't always being displayed to you. It's not like you're in every conversation. Like when, someone from the Biden administration calls up, the head of Apple or the head of Facebook or whatever, you're not a fly on the wall. You're not privy to what's going on. I think as a business, that LinkedIn originally, look, I think all the platforms to some extent, but almost LinkedIn in particular, sort of is going with the flow, right? Because originally LinkedIn saw itself as a way to get jobs, mainly. And it's funny because you use that, Nicholas. That's one of the reasons you use it. Not me, necessarily. I don't think it hurts my business. I'm not sure a video like this will help me, but I don't mind. But it's fine. The idea that there should be a website where professionals can network and get each other jobs and help each other get in corporations. I mean, that's great, and I think that's LinkedIn's primary function. And that's what they founded. That's what I guess his name is Reed. I can't remember his last name, but that's what he founded it to do. And Microsoft bought it for that reason. So as a private business, to me, if you want to run this as sort of mainly like a job networking site, you can. Now, they don't do that. They've chosen not to do that. They're letting you use their site as a platform to disseminate information that has to do with business sometimes and sometimes doesn't.
Yeah, I'm pretty used. I use BizFluence for business now, which is another platform, and I use LinkedIn for basically Facebook in a sense. Facebook and business type stuff.
On the high level, though, I've gotten stuff done with Facebook. I mean, there's definitely been some stuff that I've been able to accomplish that Facebook helped me with. I mean, have I gone through a lot of like dead ends and, met people that, were nothing with nothing and kind of full of shit? Yes, I've done that too. But that's true business. That's true if you go to a conference that happens. I mean, and LinkedIn is like that. LinkedIn's like a roving conference. So it's like an ongoing conference where there's people educating others and people asking questions and commenting and, and it's great. I mean, I think I'm not going to sit there and criticize because I take advantage of it. I enjoy it. The relationships that I've made, of which I consider you an important one, but certainly not the only, are relationships that I value. I mean, frankly, I value them more than a lot of friends I haven't seen in 5 or 10 years. It's one thing to say, 10, I'm an older guy now, right? So I have friends that I haven't seen 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years. And, why do you lose touch with people? Why what happened? Especially now with the internet. I mean,
the longer you've not seen somebody, the more scary it is when you see them again, because in your mind, you still remember them as they were 30 years ago. And then you look at them after 30 years and you're like, sheesh, what happened to you, bro?
Well, what's funny is I'm about to do that for my television show. I'm going to go back to 2 friends of mine from college who became incredibly successful. Like one of them sort of household name. The other one is a little less so, but super successful in her own way. And one of them was a very good friend of mine. And the other one was a different scenario because he was a senior when I was a sophomore, and he was my mentor in my major. And I'm going to approach both of them now to help me with my show because the show's all ready to go. I have like 10 scripts. I have 5 years worth of plots. And, we're ready to try and market it and get a showrunner and find a network and get it. Well, you have to get a production company first. And I have a friend of mine helping me from college who's a very successful Asian production executive who's been advising me. And the way to go is to go with production companies. But LinkedIn is like, I mean, it could be like, it's funny because it's not really like Facebook because a lot of my older friends who I initially spoke to on LinkedIn have become sort of alienated by my politics and philosophy. And, some of them.
Why is that? Why do people alienate you for your thought processes? I mean, it's like it's my own room. Let me do what I want. How can people like shove you off just for thinking differently?
I'm going to tell you why, and I'm going to speak on their behalf. You and I lead unconventional lives. It's just a fact. My life was conventional for a long time. It's been unconventional for, some time now. Exactly when it started being conventional, but certainly, over a decade for sure. And people that lead conventional lives, by and large, and I'm not speaking for all of them, but certainly many of them, I would even go so far as to say most of them, are pretty unhappy with the grind. Doesn't mean they're never happy. It just means that they resent their work, that they don't like their work, they don't enjoy it. It takes up a lot of their time that they don't enjoy. And when they see someone like you and I, who is less encumbered, by doing things that we don't want to do. They're naturally resentful, and I don't blame them for that. But LinkedIn has not been like Facebook that way for me. It really, there are a few people who I know from the past who I occasionally will speak to me and say hi or like one of my posts. By and large, they don't. And I think it's because my post is sort of out there. I mean, definitely is true. I think the people that I communicate with are very intelligent, and I really enjoy communicating with them, and it's worth it. And I mean, is it exhibitionist? I mean, you're stating your opinion and you're bearing witness.
So are they resentful for your success in work, or are they resentful for your out there posts?
Well, I mean, the success in work, well, that's a complicated issue. And there's a lot of twists and turns that have to do with me and general psychology. So, it's complicated on both ends. My own personal life and history is complicated. And how people react to other people who have lifestyles that are different than theirs is complicated, and it changes. I mean, first of all, there's a big difference between when you see someone in person and when you just text with them or interact with them on some kind of cyber media we do like LinkedIn. It's just much more easy to the world is so busy with flashing lights and things that you can choose from to entertain your mind with or distract you, or infotainment, like I call it, right?
The more busy and the more driven I get with just the podcast and the client work, the more even 1 or 2 hours sitting playing a game makes me feel terrible. I just feel like I've lost so much because my time is so valuable. I don't understand how people can just go their whole lives like that.
I mean, there's a lot of unhappy people in the world right now, and I think there's a lot of hurting, especially there's a lot of hurting people, period. Certainly in the third world, even in the first world. I mean, so much of the economy is atrophied from COVID that even though the economy, I think, had problems before COVID, Trump was selling it as MAGA. The Fed's been pumping money for so many years now that, and people forget, but the Fed had to save JP Morgan right before COVID. It's ironic. It's
2008, the financial crisis.
It's just like what happened. No, right now. No, this was in 2019.
JP Morgan.
They opened up they had to open up the repo window for them because they'd overextended themselves and were no longer able to tap private credit. So they had to go to the Fed window for big numbers. Numbers that they had a margin call for that. It would have been oh my God, it would crash the market. And that's where it got drowned out by COVID. Just like the audit, all the UFO money, all the money that made all the fancy ass shit that we look in the sky now and say, oh, it's a UFO. No, that was paid for by the $8 trillion. Some of that was double counted. I don't think it's exactly 8 trillion, but there's a lot of money missing. And that money came out of an audit that the Defense Department released on September 10th, 2001. On September 11th, 2001, the World Trade Centers were blown up. And that little document that would have gotten a lot of media attention because it was a huge number. Remember, trillions are not 7 trillion even now is a big number. 20 years ago, 7 trillion was a ginormous number. And that's 7 trillion over a number of years. So some of those years, taking out 50 billion or 100 billion in the 80s, that was big numbers. When they were building these sort of space bases and colonies and all the stuff that they built in the 80s and 90s that my partner and friend Pramal worked on. Some of them, not all of them. Some of them. I mean, that's the news that they don't want to tell you. And they don't want to tell you that because then they'd have to unlock the real science. Well, not really the real science, but the real technology. I think that technology has outstripped the real science. But clearly, understanding nanotechnology, understanding quantum technology, that stuff's all happening now. And that's the basis of all this stuff. Like material science is another one. Like if you ever listen to the UFO stuff, they're famous for what's his name? Bob. I forget his name. He's like some guy that said he worked at not Bob Dean. I can't remember his last name. Bob Lazar. I know from Pramal that he was sort of like a plant. Like they let him see stuff so that he could, sort of like, be like control this information.
You think the whole UFOs things that the government are giving sort of credence to now is like it's a sort of cover for the actual real technologies that they're making, or even like interdimensional demons or something like that?
Okay. So interdimensional demons, I'm not going to touch right now. I don't really have an answer. I suspect it's not exactly like that, but we can come back to that.
We could probably name this podcast "Punching People in the Face on LinkedIn and Interdimensional Demons."
What it is in 1947, a decision was made by Truman to basically create the CIA from the OSS. And this all became part of the CIA. And the military and the DOD.
Try to talk more close to the mic. Sometimes you're a bit quiet.
And the military and the DOD don't know what the CIA has. And they created like a whole separate force. And even now, even when you look at regular warfare, the CIA went from a group when it was created all the way up until the 80s, really, where it was really sort of like analysts. The cloak and dagger stuff is more for the television stuff and the movies, but not anymore. After the 80s and 90s, into the 90s, the CIA turned into a paramilitary force. And they took a lot of military guys, and the CIA is like a corporation. It's the largest corporation in the world by a fair margin. And military is too. Military is different. Military is the largest corporation, but the military is more compartmentalized. CIA stands for Central. It stands Central Intelligence Agency. Think of it, all those words, they all matter. And they all tell you something important. So everything filters up to a top, to the director, although the director himself, as a political appointee, is not in every loop. They have loops that go around him, that go to people that are permanent employees. And that's when some of the societies that you're not fond of get involved too, to help control this animal. To say, hey, if the government's not on top of this, who's on top of it? So on top of it are your leading citizens that are members of these elite, semi-secret societies that we know of, like the Illuminati, like the Shriners, like the Scottish Rite, like the Biltderburgers. These groups are known. It's not like there's any conspiratorial about mention.
Do you know anybody that's been to a Biltderburg meeting?
I do actually. It's I'm not going to say his name. He didn't have to do sworn me to secrecy on it, but it's one of my LinkedIn buddies that he's been there. So, I don't think
he swore you to secrecy on it.
No, he did not. But I'm going to pretend he did. I'm not going to, out him because I don't know what that would mean. I certainly enjoy his friendship. I don't think it made him bad for anyone, but there's just no reason to give up his confidence. But I know we got to go in there because I get back to my intern.
Yeah, but why should there be? Why should it be something secret? Like you're going to an event where you're discussing things that are going to affect 6 billion, 7 billion people, and yet people are ashamed to talk about it. It should be like the calling card, like keynote speaker, a Biltderburg attendee, on your LinkedIn profile. Like,
there's
it's making a huge influence, much more influence than any keynote speaker on some stupid conference.
Davos is out in the open, they have meetings that the reporters can attend, but they can't. And Biltderburg does that too. The other reporters, see some things and there are people that betray confidences or that speak to their friends. There's networks. There's always stuff getting out. You see that. That's why there's so much disinformation. People don't realize that, for every bit of information out there, there's disinformation. People that are feeding you information that's bad for a purpose that fits their needs. So whether that's CIA,
if I was invited to a Biltderburg meeting,
disinformation or Chinese disinformation, there's all these groups spewing disinformation into the environment, and we have to be discerning and be able to pick apart disinformation from information.
If I was invited to a Biltderburg meeting, I would say, look, if I go, I'm allowed to report on it. Because if I went to the Biltderburg meeting, all my contacts that are like thinking the way I am would think I'm some kind of crazy traitor or person NWO. So what have they got to hide? If they're making decisions on our behalf, when the secrecy on these kind of things, can't trust them.
I think there's a Supreme Court justice. I think it was Justice Douglas. His famous quote, which you may have heard, and if you don't know it, everyone should know it. It's just a great quote, and it really talks about what you're saying. Is the greatest disinfectant is fresh air and sunshine.
Yeah.
So whatever really ails society, if you really want to go try and cure it, bring it out in the open and expose it to light of day. How is that going to happen? We're definitely coming to some type of end of history. Either it's going to end well and we're going to have some type of peaceful world that's futuristic in terms of people having peaceful lives that are meaningful, that are dignified, and with a planet that's not being destroyed, not putting out fake continents of plastic in the middle of the ocean, killing fish. And I do believe I believe we're in a climate crisis, and there's no reason not to tackle it. It's like an insurance policy. It's like people saying maybe there's not global warming. Okay, we'll tell you what. Let's say we shift off of fossil fuel, which I'll tell you right now, just making it is disgusting and filthy. Taking oil out of the ground, taking natural gas out of the ground, moving it around, processing it, cleaning it, using it, taking the waste. Stinks. Okay. If you think global warming is all that matters, and if not, that's a great way to do things, you're a fool. And you don't understand how process engineering works. You don't understand how resource management works.
Well, you get carcinogens out there and people dying of cancer and that. It's stinking, yeah.
So the point I'm trying to make is that with the global warming, let's say it's 50-50. Let's say 50% of the time it's real, 50% of the time it's not. If it's real, it's a catastrophe. And if the way to avoid the catastrophe is to get rid of these fossil fuels, which are bad anyway. It's not like these fossil fuels are good. And if we take it's not like the vax, where they're giving you something that you don't want to take, that's bad, and you're doing it to avoid something worse, right? That's what a vax is. You're saying, hey, we've got only two choices, bad and worse. I get that. But in this case, it's not a bad choice going to clean energy. Everyone bitches and moans about it, but it's happening as they speak. And the more it happens, and it's not like, when you dig and I got to go to my guy, but when you take oil out of the ground, you spend a huge amount of money and you bring out a certain amount of oil, and then you spend a lot of money again, and you can take some more oil out. That's called refracting. So you work the well 3 times, you can work a well, and then it's done. And then it's a pollution problem, because oil wells, when they're finished, you got to fill them. It's not like, hey, just walk away. It's like, it's not like throwing out a plastic bag of sandwich. It's like in your car, you eat a sandwich, you're naughty, you throw a plastic bag with a sandwich out the window. This is not the same. And there's very serious penalties for this, by the way, too. So it's an expensive proposition to manage fossil fuels in a life cycle way. Solar panels, windmills. I'm more solar than wind, but wind has its places too. I'm not against wind, but I'm a solar guy. But solar panels, they're going to last 25, 30 years. We only rate them for 20, but they'll last 25. They say they break down and degrade, but there's ways they'll be able to tweak them up without replacing. And then if you really figure out what the cost of the energy is over those years, especially with the cost of solar plummeting, and then you add batteries to it so that you levelize the power. So you overbuild, so you have more power than you need during the day. So during the day, you distribute that power that's needed. The extra power, you charge your batteries. And at night, you distribute the power of the power in your batteries. And, will there be some natural gas burning? Probably a little bit for at least the next 20, 30 years, maybe 50. But over time, it'll phase out. And it's positive. And it's not like the vax, which it's either something that's bad that hurts some people and others it doesn't affect, but it avoids the COVID, which affects more people, but some people it doesn't. But in terms of LinkedIn, I think that we're lucky to have it. I certainly wouldn't have met you otherwise. I went to meet a lot of the new friends that I've had a chance to meet, and I'm grateful for. And that's kind of it. If you want to have a panel later where some of the guys that feel differently want to debate me and tell me why LinkedIn is terrible and why they never should have been banned, I'm not against it. If you want, you can also do a panel without me where you just talk to those guys. Certainly gave me my chance to talk about LinkedIn today and give my 2 cents.
It's been brilliant having you on the show, Howard.
See, I'm not bald yet. Well, actually, I shaved my hair. It's a little bald. All right,
guys. Great head of hair, mate.
And I got to stay young. We got to stay tough because I got to keep. That's the thing. I remember. I'm an old man now. I can't threaten these young men with pugilism. Anyway, listen. Thanks, Nikos. Have a great day. All right, man.
Thanks, Howard. See you again next time. It's been a great having you on the show. See you soon. Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks very much for joining me today on the show. I would really appreciate if you would leave a review on iTunes or platform of choice. Also, I'm still looking for sponsors, so if you'd like to get your company out there, please get in touch. I really appreciate every listener of the show. I'm trying my very best here to bring as much interesting content as I can find. Also, if you have a story you want to share to the world, then please get in touch and we can discuss whether you'd be a good fit for the show. Thanks again. Bye-bye.